Well, good morning, good afternoon, folks, depending on which part of the world you are dialing in from. As Freddie said, my name is Ike. I'm the Senior Vice President for Strategic Partnerships here at Kiwi Tech in the Washington, D.C. area. I'll just take a few minutes and walk through our history for those of you who may not know about it. At Kiwi Tech, we are a global community of innovators, investors, mentors, and enterprises with close to 500 companies in our portfolio. We are backed by a network of more than 3,000 investors. Till date, we have helped our portfolio companies raise more than $100 million, in addition to providing $100 million as tech investments, as in-kind equity services. We are backed up by 200 mentors and host more than 100 networking events annually. A little bit about our history and how we got here. So in 2012, the founders of Kiwi Tech built and scaled their previous company over 2 decades to one of the largest digital media publishing companies, Aptara, took it from 0 to 5,000 people and sold it, and started Kiwi Tech. The following year, 2013, we launched our startup program. In 2017, we launched our demo days, such as the one today. All of those events used to be in person in different cities in the US. In 2019, we expanded into the Middle East as well as Europe. And over the last 2 years, we have built this portfolio to, again, as mentioned in the previous slide, more than a portfolio of more than 500 portfolio companies. More than 100 events annually. We acquired Graphite Financial out of New York, launched our go-to-market as well as crowdfunding campaigns, and looking at several more acquisitions. And really the idea over the next 2 years is to build this ecosystem to more than 1,000 companies and targeting 100 of those companies to exit at $100 million plus. So again, fantastic growth across the board. The portfolio companies are all in all verticals, fintech, biotech, healthcare, and today's event again is going to be focused on fintech. So what does the model look like? For US-based companies that qualify, we provide half of our development services in the form of in-kind investment. So let's take an example where we have a technology development service, and let's just say it costs $500,000. There is no minimum or maximum. Let's just take that as an example. So we will provide half of that in exchange for cash, and the other half we will provide in exchange for equity in the company at the current valuation. Where this helps a lot of early stage startups is to save cash upfront. We all know cash is king, and really use their equity in the company as valuable currency, as well as get a term sheet in place. So the growth over the last few years, in the 3 years between 2019 and 2021, built a portfolio of more than 122,000 companies. About half of them we got on the phone, had an initial meeting. Out of that, close to a quarter, we met with the CEO and the founding team, and ended up with a final pick of about little over 300 companies. So the deal flow is quite selective in terms of who we work with. We do look for the right team, as well as the right idea. So what does the ecosystem look like? The stakeholders are made up of our portfolio companies, such as the ones pitching today, our esteemed investor network, many of whom are on the Zoom call today, evaluating our companies, various incubators and accelerators, as well as the corporate community. With more than 500 engineers on staff, we do provide latest and greatest technology services. I mentioned Graphite Financial that we acquired, responsible for providing our finance and accounting to our portfolio companies, as well as digital marketing and equity crowdfunding. In the pipeline, we're looking to build centers of excellence related to emerging markets, as well as crypto and blockchain. And really the idea there is through folks like myself, we build partnerships on the ground, make an impact on the community, and then offshore, we leverage our global capabilities to support our ecosystem. The investor events are quite diverse, related to various asset classes, such as family offices, angel investors, to geography-based, Middle East or East Coast or West Coast, to vertical specific events, such as the one that we are having today, whether it is fintech, blockchain, or other areas. We are also very proud of serving historically underserved communities, such as our Hispanic Founders Day, our Black Entrepreneurs Matter Day, and our Female Founders Day. Back over to you.
Okay, hello everyone. Let's get started. First of all, my name is Shawn Neal from Woodshed Media, and I'll get into who I am and what this session is all about in a second. But first off, I want to talk to you a little bit about how this is going to be different from some of the other ones you may have watched here on Kiwi Tech. I, as you can see, am prepping for a commercial shoot tomorrow, and I am not available to do this session live. So we're going to do something a little bit different here, where I'm going to do this pre-recorded session now for you guys. And any questions that you have, submit them the normal way to the Kiwi Tech team, and they're going to get those over to me. And then later on over this weekend, I'm going to record responses to everything, and we'll either put that up digitally, or the Kiwi Tech team will have some information for you on where you can find answers to your questions from this session. So we're not going to be able to do the Q&A in real time, but we will definitely find a way for me to follow up and loop back with you guys on engagement and some questions. So who am I? Who is this guy talking to you about storytelling? I got my start in really public speaking from a strange place. I started my career as a professional musician, as actually a drummer on tour and doing musical theater and other things, and in the early and mid to late '90s, all the '90s. And as that kind of grew to an end, I was looking for a career change, and ironically found my way to Apple, and started doing a lot of work in the branding and marketing division, and specifically getting up on stage in front of an audience and delivering keynote presentations, such as this one. And really at the time explaining, a very transitional Apple getting away from this is the pre-iPod era, getting away from the proprietary processors, introducing iPod, introducing iPhone, introducing the Intel platform for the Macintosh, all during the time that I was there. So it was very much taking what was a niche technology and explaining it to the masses in a very simple way to get them on board with what I think we can all agree has become one of the dominant technology platforms out there. So that's how I got started in this world, and I specifically kind of flipped that into doing video out of necessity for my own startup. The Jeff Wenzel, who you all know from Kiwi Tech, and I decided to do a startup company in Detroit right around the time that YouTube was beginning and crowdfunding was beginning. And there was all this disruption in the music space over downloading and record sales, physical record sales or CD sales at the time weren't happening anymore, and everything was starting to filter its way out to digital. We had an idea to really simplify things and bring bands into a black box studio and record 5 songs all live, one take. And we needed to do two things. Number one, we needed to figure out how to do video for that, and I was like, I'll learn that side. And number two is, we needed a way to fund it, and we had just seen the emergence, within weeks of the Kickstarter platform. And I was like, along with my video duties, filming these artists, I'm going to take control over how do we educate the public about this message about how to use these new technologies of social media and Kickstarter or crowdfunding at the time, which was a brand new concept, into getting an audience excited about microfunding these projects. So that's my background and how I got started into this, and that later evolved into raising the money and filming some of the most successful music documentaries to ever come out of the crowdfunding platform in the Wrecking Crew, one that we raised the money for, and then Cream, the Story of Cream magazine, which you can find on Amazon Prime right now, both raising the money for it and then being the principal camera operator and filming that. So in that process, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of companies, both in the Kickstarter reward-based crowdfunding platforms, along with the investment crowdfunding platforms, of how to distill your story as a startup into these emerging platforms, these ever-changing platforms to connect with an audience. So anyway, that's who I am. Let's get into it. All right. So your story. Who are you? How are you going to get your message effectively communicated to an audience, specifically using video? The very first step is a step that I think people overlook. And that is, you really have to communicate who you are. Who is this person in front of me talking, trying to get me to invest or buy into this idea or this concept? And this is the area that I think most founders immediately run into a brick wall for a couple of reasons. Number one is a lot of founders just aren't comfortable being in front of a camera or being in front of an audience. Maybe they have a more of an engineering background or a software background or a finance background, whatever it is, and they're just not used to getting out there and talking in front of people. And unfortunately, this is going to have to be one of the biggest hurdles that you overcome or you find a solution to if you're going to be able to effectively operate in these mediums that are out there for communicating your message or your idea through video, specifically through investment crowdfunding. You've got to be able to learn how to use these tools and speak in a very, very concise manner and communicate, this is who I am, this is my background, this is why I'm investable, this is my pedigree, this is why I'm passionate about this idea. This is Smart Girls and their CEO, whose name I'm not even going to begin to try to butcher online, but we're gonna go through some of their campaign and you can see. But I think that she was a really great example about a person who was immediately out front and able to communicate her passion for teaching girls to code through toys, which we'll get into a little bit about their product idea. But effectively, in every engagement, every conversation, every place that she was, immediately connecting the person, the CEO, to the passion and the idea and the project, and that's kind of that sweet spot of being able to effectively put yourself out there. The second thing is you really have to be able to be um, concise about what it is that you're making. In this case, this toy was a robotic car for young girls that is programmed with the iPad, designed as kind of a vehicle, literally and metaphorically, to introduce them to the world of coding, to address a problem that I'm sure you're all aware of and facing, that there just isn't an equal representation of women in technology, women in these coding areas. And this toy was designed to appeal to the girl toy culture, but also provide some STEM education and change things. So really being able to, in one image, which I think this is a great image right here, this image effectively communicates exactly what it is that they're making, who it's for, and what the purpose is. Um, you also have to really understand who your customer is. What is all of your content, all of your communications have to be really targeted to the audience and be able to effectively communicate to a potential investor who are the people that are going to be interested in your products. A lot of founders say, well, everyone's going to want what I have. Well, no, not everyone's going to want what you have. But when you can really laser beam focus a product like this and say, hey, look, this is a toy for this age range of girls, and this is what this is supposed to do, and this is why their parents are going to be really excited to maybe choose this toy over a Barbie. You really understanding who your customer base is, you're able to really focus your content that direction. And when you have a retail investor or someone looking at you from one of these platforms, they really understand these three key metrics of who is this founder, what is it that they're making, who are they trying to target, and with simple imagery and video and effective communication of your concept, you can really hook someone on these types of platforms very quickly, and they can really get through that learning curve of understanding what exactly it is that you're trying to do and trying to bring to the world and why they should invest in it. And then the fourth pillar of this is, where are you going? What are your goals for this product? What types of things is it trying to change? What are your ambitions for the growth of the business? And this could be, where some of your expectations come into of what year 2, year 3, year 4 looks like post investment. What some of your ambitions are as you're growing through. But these are the things that you really need to be thinking about as the components of your story that's going to be able to effectively move you on to the next phase and get a viewer on one of these platforms, whether it's an investment crowdfunding platform or your social media or simply a presentation up in front of people. If you can do these four things connected to your story and very, very effectively communicate those through your product, your imagery, and your video, you're going to be able to get someone really excited about what's coming next for you and get them to do the next thing that you're asking them to do. So let's talk about how do we accomplish that? How are we developing this voice and really distilling everything about you as a entrepreneur and your idea and your investment opportunity down to a voice that you can communicate. Um, Here's the most important thing: is you got to keep it simple. I understand that there is a lot of nuance and details in technology behind some of your companies. Whether not all of you are going to have a very simple toy or something that's easy to communicate. We're talking about a lot of complex technology or pharmaceuticals or whatever is behind your company. But when it comes to developing the voice that you have and what you're choosing to communicate to an audience, you really, really have to keep it simple on these platforms. There's going to be opportunities for that viewer to do their due diligence and dig deeper once they get past the surface level. But when you're talking about creating video and communications, you really have to be A to B to C to D. And it has to be arithmetic, not algebra. Okay, guys, we've got to keep these concepts and the things that we're communicating very, very simple so an audience can go, oh, that's really interesting. I want to learn more about that. Okay, because that's what we're trying to do with this content. We're trying to get them to just, all these things that are going by, stop on your thing and say, wait a minute, what is that? I want to learn more. The second thing is, and we talked about this a little bit in the first slides, is you've got to know your audience. Okay, that's two things. It's a little bit different from knowing who the audience is for your product. You got to know who your audience is for this content, right? So let's say you're doing a pharmaceutical product, and you're talking in front of an audience of just pharmaceutical investors. You can probably get a little bit more into the weeds. All right, you know who's in the room. You're reading what's out there and you're tailoring that message to that audience. But when we're on one of these platforms, one of these retail investment platforms here, or when we're using YouTube or social media or these various different areas, you've got to understand who these people are and what they're doing there, and what it's going to take to get them to stop on you. And I can tell you, it's not going to be um, and everybody is going to love this, so everyone needs to hear it. You really need to think about, okay, if I'm making said piece of content or going on said platform, who are the one or two constituencies that I want to really get excited about this? Now, that might be a really narrow audience, but if you can really effectively, get your message out to them and start to see some results, that really narrow audience can be the center of the bullseye that you're seeing here in this image. And getting them excited and effective will start to reach out, and you can start addressing the other layers of the target here. So when we talk about that Smart Girl's toy, her all of her messaging early on was all about, I want to excite the parents of these kids that would want to buy my toy, and I want to excite the type of retail investor that is aligned with my mission of what I'm trying to accomplish by getting more young girls excited about coding and getting behind the scenes and technology, right? Very, very much the center of the bullseye. But when she starts to build momentum with those audiences, she starts to get things going and get on Shark Tank and build investors. Um, you can start to address those outer layers of that bullseye that aren't necessarily your core audience based off the momentum of that initial audience. But if you immediately try to start just spraying your message around every constituency on this target, you're probably going to be diluting your effectiveness in your message, and nothing is really going to really stick. So you really got to develop that voice specific to that audience on that platform in that space and time, and focus on getting those people energized who are going to be the center of your bullseye here, and use that tip of the center of that bullseye, the tip of the spear, sorry to mix metaphors, as the momentum to start to reach broader audiences down the road. But it has to be targeted. You have to understand who you're speaking to in relationship to that platform. And here comes this next thing is you've got to be the front man. You've got to be the person who is out in front. You've got the audience gathered, you got their attention, now you got to keep their attention. You can't suddenly say, oh, okay, thank you for coming. This is a bass solo now. I'm gonna bring up my COO and they're gonna take it from here. No, no, no. No, no, no. You have got to be the person that this is all filtering through, and you have got to continuously communicate, this is who we are, this is my values, this is who I am, and I am investable. It's okay to, bring some other team members on and, have that little bit of a guitar solo here, that great drummer, that, bass solo down the road, but you have got to be the front person. You have got to be the reason that this audience is gathered, and it all has to channel through you. And if you do these things effectively, understand that the reason we're making this content and we're using these platforms is not to win all the battles you're going to have with this audience for your content. It's to lead them to the next step. Oftentimes when we're talking about investment crowdfunding and some of the hesitation to simplify that message is that next step is to, okay, they really get a basic understanding of what it is that you're doing. That next step is getting them to your platform page, or you're going to have your disclosures and a lot more deeper dive information on the investment probability. But they're gonna be really excited when they're getting to that and starting to dig in, and you're more likely to convert them as an investor because you've done these first three things right, and then you're leading them to that next step versus just firing that information can at them all at once and it's like, I don't understand what you're trying to do and I'm overwhelmed with this and I'm just going to move on. So if you do all these things correctly, you're going to lead that audience to that next step, and you're going to get them further down the pipeline of ultimately converting to be an investor. All right, so we're talking about video here. Video is the dominant platform where this is all happening. I want to show you guys a couple of examples that I think have done all these things we've talked about well. We're not going to dwell on bad examples for a couple reasons. Number one, I don't think there's any reason to shame anybody or do any of that. It's all about celebrating the successes here. I think we can all recognize what an ineffective message is, and that's a different video to dissect that. I want to show you some examples that I think have really nailed it in terms of getting all these pieces together. So the first thing I'm going to show you, and we're going to step out of the keynote here and get into a page, is we're going to start with, this is called PopCom. And this is, as you can see, they're over on the Start Engine platform. And they've done multiple campaigns, multiple millions, I think over 3 or 4 different campaigns. And let's just watch the video and see what you think, given the context of everything we just talked about. All right, so that's PopCom. Uh, let's talk about what I love about this video. Number one, when we talk about be the front man, be the front person, she immediately exudes, a colorful confidence in everything, the styling choices, how she's engaging with the camera, and her effective communication of a lot of the what inevitably would be some, initial objections and concerns about what the product is and what the product is doing, right? She's showing you a couple verticals, letting toward the end of the video who she is as an entrepreneur, her experience for that, and then you're seeing where the company's going. Keep in mind I think this is their third crowdfunding video. So if you go back and look at their previous Start Engine campaigns, you'll kind of see the evolution of, genesis of the idea. Here's the first prototype, and now they've been in the field with 20 or so different locations going. But in this round of investment, it's all about this is the breakout year. This is what we've already been able to do. This is where we're going, where we're having successes, and where we're really starting to narrow down who this product is for, where it's going to be effective, and where it's going to see some growth. So this video, obviously, they've had a lot of success, but I think this is a really great example in about 2 minutes and 30 some odd seconds of really effectively communicating what PopCom is all about and getting a person on the hook of saying, "Oh, I really want to learn more about this." Okay, so I think this is a really excellent example that portrays everything we've been talking about here. I'll show you a little bit different approach. This is True Brain. Again, I think we're looking at the second or third campaign with this, and I know that this particular founder um, isn't necessarily as comfortable in front of the camera as she was. So that solution of, okay, you got to be a front person. You've got, the story has got to be about you. You've got to be the CEO. You've got to be out front. But what are some of the ways that if we're really running into those barriers of not necessarily having that comfort level, what are some of the ways that we can innovate with the content around that to still maintain the mission and still really get a sense of personality? And I think this video has done an excellent job of that. Let's go. So what I love about this video is you're seeing a lot of the same mechanics of communicating what the product is, who the product's for, what the pedigree is, where they're going, and what the stage of the investment opportunity is. But we're not using the trope of a CEO talking directly to camera, which we know in some of these setups um, can come off a little more um, wooden, you know. And by changing it over to a voiceover in a more rehearsed situation where we don't necessarily have that environment that is making it sometimes uncomfortable for a person, And when we're using imagery of the CEO, it's very limited in terms of face in front of camera, and done more with a photo shoot in a more controlled environment where we can be a bit more relaxed and have a little bit more fun. Then tailor all the content around that to match when we're using our models and we're using some of the stock imagery. Um, it's just as effective, you know. So we're really understanding who the person is, who what that story is, and when we're running into some of those barriers that could be a hindrance to effectively being the front person, we're not making the choice of okay, just use some random spokesperson or whatever. No, no, no. Let's create a way around that. Let's find a way that does work and allows us to effectively get that content out there. So these are two really excellent examples of obviously delivering results, getting people to take that next step and find out what's going on with this. Why are these companies having so much success? But all of all of those components of effective communication, of storytelling, are happening within these videos. All right, and just to show you one really interesting thing. Um, one of the objections that often comes up is the costs around creating content like this. Now, you are going to have to invest in doing quality content, and I can tell you, you know, nothing is better than having professionals that are used to working in interview situations or used to working with these personalities that can take a look at the conditions or the situations that are around each founder and find a way to get to that end goal with what they're being presented with, what the various different nuances are of the company. But that is an investment as well, right? I made a point to show you two videos from campaigns that have been on their second or third iteration of investment crowdfunding to show you that this content isn't a one and done. It can really start somewhere and then you build upon it. For example, I think this is TrueBrain's third campaign. I have their first video. So let's take a look at this one. So this obviously, because they made such a great investment in the animation and the production values for their first campaign when they were introducing their CBD product, they were able to build upon that and use it as a foundation and repeat elements of it, and simply just on their next raise or their next iteration or different commercials or things that they're doing, think of it as a modular piece that they're moving this piece around, this piece around, this piece around, adding XYZ piece of new content that's relevant for the new goal or the new launch or the new thing that they're trying to ask their audience to do, and just build upon that foundation. So it's not a one-time cost or a sunken cost of just investing in doing a really effective video piece. If you do it right, these things can build upon each other and become these building blocks of content that you're using all throughout this stage of life in your company. So a really great example of making the investment in doing it correctly the first time, and then using it as the building blocks for the next one, the next one, the next one, moving on down the line. All right, so let's take a look at the last little piece here. I'm going to jump right back into my keynote. Tailoring your voice for the platform you're using. This is super, super important, all right, because when we're making this content, it's kind of going everywhere, right? It's going on your WeFunder platform or your Start Engine platform, but it's also being used in Facebook ads or TikTok ads or YouTube. It's scattered across all these platforms, and all these platforms have a personality and a purpose, and they're not always the same, and they're not always aligned. And it's really important that you take this into consideration when you're going to put some content on these various different platforms. So let's take a look at that. Number one, when you're choosing to put your content on a platform, you got to ask yourself, what is the purpose of the platform? And I'm choosing TikTok here because this is the new hotness. This is where a lot of um, energy has moved away from the Facebook platform, especially in young people, and moved over to the TikTok platform throughout the pandemic. But it is not Facebook. It doesn't work the same way. The primary purpose of the TikTok platform is to entertain and to engage, right? You see these trends that are happening, and these challenges that are happening that are being repeated over and over and over again on these platforms. But then, that content takes on a whole new life with response videos and side by side videos and all kinds of different ways that are built into the platform that are giving the viewers ways to engage with each other and use these videos to build off one another and communicate and talk. And if you're building a piece of content and say, well, we just got to be on TikTok, we got to put this thing on TikTok, and if it's not built to have that kind of life, to engage that same way with that audience and understand why that audience is there, it's just going to stick out like a sore thumb and just be ignored. So when you're looking at what you're building and where you're putting it, you really have to ask yourself, okay, what are the platforms that we're going to use? What are the purposes of the platform? And does our content fit in the culture, vibe, and style of that platform? And if it doesn't, what changes or what alterations need to be made to that content to make it conform to that platform? Or are you having the conversations of, are we creating content that's specific to the platforms that we want to be on? Again, going back to that targeting that audience and knowing who this is for, that's going to get them designed to take the next step. Because remember, the most important thing about all this content that we're creating is we want the audience to take that next step in the journey with us. So when you've made your content, you're talking about where you're going to put it, really step back and have that conversation of, okay, here's all these choices in the landscape of where we can be putting our content and where we're engaging with an audience. But is our content aligned with the purpose and the culture of that platform? And ask yourself the question of, should you be there? If you should be there, why are you there? And if you're there, does my content fit? And if it doesn't, what is the solution for that? The second thing is really, now that you've decided on where your content's going to go, take a step back and compare your content to others. The two I showed you are great examples of success stories on the Start Engine platform of, how does my content stack up to some people that I think are aspirational that are having success? Is my content on that level? Is it below that level? Is it in between? One of the smartest things I ever heard when I was back in my music career, Jeff and I were doing a radio interview with a really famous radio personality here in the Detroit market, Ann DeLisi. And we were talking about how does an artist or a band who's just emerging um, get to that next level. And when she was talking about when people were sending her demos at the time, you know, they would almost be incredulous when she would tell them, "Hey guys, you're not quite ready yet, or this isn't quite right for us." And they thought that the thing they made was just amazing, and how could she, have such short vision and such little insight into not deciding to play their song on that station? And she said, "Well, here's what I want you guys to do. I want you to take that song that you've made and compare it to your favorite artist, the artist that you think is the most successful, that you are just like, that is aspirational and that you want to be, and play it next to an artist that you think that is successful out there, that you think is undeserving of that success, and that you should be doing better than. Play that song, and your aspirational song, and compare the three and really honestly sit back and assess where you are in that order. And when you can really step out of yourself for a minute, go through that exercise and do that, you really, really understand what maybe some of the shortcomings are in your content, or maybe some of the things that you're doing really well you need to do more of when you're comparing yourself to your peers. So I want you guys to go through that exact same exercise when you're making content, whether it's for Start Engine or Refunder or ads or YouTube or whatever, is find that aspirational campaign or company or person and say, man, I really love this content. I would love my content to be like this. And maybe I've sought out to make some content similar to this. Let's see how I stack up against that. Along with someone that's also having success on one of these platforms or investment type activities that you think that you should be doing better than, but you're not, or you think you will be better than them, and see how your content stacks up to that campaign. And if you find yourself square in the middle and or closer to your aspirational goal, you've probably made the right choice, and your content probably is going to be effective. If you find that you're closer to the one that you don't you think you're better than, but you're not really even living up to that standard, you may have to take a step back and really ask yourself, is this the right level of content? Is this going to be effective the way I think it's going to be effective? So that compare and contrast to one above and one below, in your mind of where you think you should be, is a really, really effective tool to evaluating what it is that you're endeavoring to create or what you've created, and trying to gauge, is this going to be effective and successful? And then the last thing is your audience engaging? Um, this is a YouTube channel called "What Makes This Song Stink," and it has nothing to do with investment crowdfunding or whatever. It's actually almost a parody of everything we've been talking about. But I want you guys to all go check it out, because it is a master class in a back and forth discussion with the founder and his audience. It's something that has grown astronomically over the last 18 months, from a just kind of a shutdown pandemic goof off to a one of the most exciting channels on YouTube in the music world. But it's because the audience is receiving and engaging, giving feedback, and there is this two-way conversation going back and forth. If you're just broadcasting, and making content and putting it out there and just getting clicks, but no one is really commenting, no one is engaging, no one is giving that back and forth on those platforms, especially like a YouTube or a TikTok or a Facebook, and asking those questions and engaging on this platform. Your content isn't modern, and it isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing in the social media age. This age is all about back and forth. One of the main things I've been working on this last year is a TV show on the HGTV network, which is, initially when it first runs, it's that, traditional cable, tune in on the time and date that it airs and watch it. But just as much energy, if not a little bit more energy, is put into the behind the scenes of how the cast and the crew are engaging on all the different social media platforms with the audience. When one of these episodes goes up on the network, or then when it goes onto the streaming platforms and eventually on, clips versions of it onto YouTube, you were constantly seeing an engagement going back and forth with the cast, with the producers, and with even us on the crew. So it's really important that your content is modern and it's engaging an audience, and an audience is having a two-way dialogue with you. And if it's not doing those things, Houston, we have a problem. All right. That's all I got for you guys today. I know that we could probably go for hours and hours and hours on this topic. But at the end of the day, we'll pull up a Q&A here for you. I would love you guys to submit your questions to the Kiwi Tech team, and I'll loop back around and address those one by one, and maybe even find some examples or some things that can really diagnose a specific question. So I think what would be really, really effective if we do this is treat it as such a, hey, I'm having XYZ problem, or I think about doing XYZ thing. What are your thoughts within the context of what we've been talking about here? And if you give me a really specific rundown, I can loop back and give you some really specific suggestions and solutions to maybe how to tackle that problem. Um, but the key points I want to leave you with is you have to be the front person. It's inescapable. They're investing in you, your idea, and your company, and you have to effectively communicate that. You have to really understand who your audience is, not only for your product, but for the purpose of which you're creating the content for at this stage of the game, which I think most of you is likely going to be stepping a toe into this investment crowdfunding genre, right? So um, your audience is not everybody. Your audience is going to be very, very specific, and you want to excite that audience. You want to get that audience engaging with you. So you really have to think about narrowing that content down and simplifying that content to get those people excited, and then momentum will build. And then the last thing is it has to result in that content leading that person to take the next step, which is typically going to be digging deeper and finding more information. So you don't have to overwhelm them with information on the front end of it. That's going to be the next thing. And that audience needs to be engaging with you. You need to be asking questions, going with a back and forth. And if you're not seeing that happen, there's probably something very, very wrong or ineffective in those other steps. So keep it simple. Shoot me your questions here with the Kiwi Tech team. Um, I encourage you to make it specific to challenges or questions or things that you're facing right now in your content journey. So my answers, now that I have time to read them and come up with some real world examples, can be very, very specific solutions and suggestions to how to solve those issues that you're experiencing. Thank you very much. My name is Shawn Neal, and I think we'll be doing this again soon, hopefully in real time. And good luck making content out there, everybody.